What happens when a man who walks by faith believes he has been left to stumble in total darkness? For Matt Murdock, his Catholicism is both a shield and his deepest wound. It's the source of his strength, but it promises a salvation that feels like it's always just out of reach. He is the devil of Hell's Kitchen, a man who literally bleeds for the soul of his city, all while wrestling with one haunting question. How does a man of faith navigate a world where God's will feels obscured by darkness? In this video, we're going to explore how Matt Murdock's Catholic faith is the central, brutal conflict of his entire life. It's a spiritual war that forces him to question everything, especially what happens when that faith demands a price that's just too high to pay. His journey is one of the most compelling and painful depictions of belief in modern fiction, because it so honestly shows the struggle of clinging to faith when answers feel impossible to find. So to really get the cost of Matt Murdock's faith, you have to understand where it comes from. Most heroes are defined by their powers, but Matt is defined by a whole mess of contradictions. He's the son of a boxer and a nun, a lawyer and a vigilante, a devout Catholic who dresses up as the devil. This duality isn't just a quirk, it's the engine that drives his entire life. His faith isn't an accessory, it's the lens he sees the world through. And it was forged in the Irish Catholic streets of Hell's Kitchen and instilled in him by his father, Jack Murdock, who was a walking contradiction himself. Battlin' Jack was a brawler who made his son promise to hit the books, not people. He was a guy who worked for the mob but found his soul by refusing to throw a fight. And this is a decision that cost him his life, but gave his son a moral compass. That single act of defiance becomes the cornerstone of Matt's own philosophy. The guilt from that is immense. Matt feels like by pushing his dad to be a better man, he's the one who signed his death warrant. And this was done beautifully in the Netflix show. Now, that tragedy, plus the accident that stole his sight but gave him his incredible senses, is what cements his mission. He doesn't see his powers as some random fluke. He sees them as a gift from God. There's a line in scripture that says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." And that's exactly how Matt understands his life. And that's the why behind his whole crusade. In his early days, Matt genuinely believes that he's God's soldier. He uses the law by day, a system built on rules and the hope for redemption. But by night, he becomes God's fist, dishing out the justice the courts can't deliver. Now, his Catholicism gives him the blueprint for his mission. Guilt, confession, redemption. These aren't just story beats. They're his entire way of processing the world. The confessional is his only real sanctuary, the one place he can unload his soul to Father Lantom. Now, the early talks really set up the core tension of his life and how he's constantly asking for permission and forgiveness for the violence that he thinks is necessary. And the absolute core of that belief is his refusal to kill. This isn't just a preference, like Batman's endlessly debated rule. For Matt, it's a divine commandment. To take a life is to commit a sin, something that would sever his connection to God and obliterate the very soul that he's fighting to save. He believes everyone, no matter how evil, deserves a shot at redemption. Now, this conviction is his anchor, but as he gets dragged deeper into the darkness of Hell's Kitchen, that anchor is going to be tested, strained, and damn near broken, revealing the true, brutal cost of what he believes. Now, that clear sense of purpose starts to crack the moment he runs into two people who come to define his crusade, Wilson Fisk and Frank Castle. They aren't just adversaries. They're walking, talking arguments against his entire worldview. Each one forces him to face the limits of his faith and the rapidly rising price of his no-kill rule. Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, is the first major crack in that foundation. Fisk isn't some street level thug. He is a force of nature, a cancer that has spread through the very systems that Matt swore to uphold. Now, as a lawyer, Matt quickly finds out that the law is just a maze of loopholes that Fisk exploits perfectly. The scales of justice aren't just blind, they're rigged. This is a huge blow. The legal system, which was supposed to be the daylight half of his war, is basically useless. Now this leads him to a terrible question. If the law is broken, is his brand of non-lethal violence actually enough? Fisk operates with a kind of brutality that Matt can't match without sacrificing his own soul. He can beat up Fisk's thugs, sure, but he can't tear down his empire without crossing lines he swore that he never would. The temptation to just kill Fisk becomes this gnawing obsession. It's the first time we see the real cost of his faith. It's not just about avoiding sin, it's the maddening frustration of watching evil win because your own morals are holding you back. Every person Fisk hurts or kills is another mark on Matt's conscience and a reminder of what he didn't and continues not to do. And then comes the Punisher. If Fisk made Matt question how effective his methods were, Frank Castle makes him question if they're even moral. Frank is Matt's dark mirror, a vigilante with no code except his own. He sees Matt's refusal to kill, not as a strength, but as a half measure, a cowardice that just lets criminals get back up to kill again. Another famous rooftop debate is a straight up clash of ideologies and one of the greatest scenes in television history. The Punisher's logic is brutally simple. You don't stop evil by caging it. You stop it by putting it in the ground. This conflict eats away at Matt's certainty. His talks with Father Lantom get more desperate. He's not just confessing what he's done anymore. He's wrestling with God's perceived inaction. Why does God allow a man like Fisk to rise to power? Why does evil seem so much more effective than good? The physical toll of being Daredevil is obvious. The broken bones, the stitches, the exhaustion, but the spiritual toll is so much worse. The cracks in his faith are spreading, caused by the constant, agonizing friction between his sacred rules and the profane reality of the world that he is trying to save. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this kind of analysis, I have actually started a Discord linked in the description. It's still early, but that's kind of the point. It's a place to build real discussions from the ground up and build a community. Alright, now let's follow Matt into the Abyss. After surviving a building collapsing on him at the end of the Defenders, Matt Murdock is physically and spiritually obliterated. He washes up a man reborn, not in grace, but in pure agony. This is where the cost of his faith is finally paid in full, and the debt is his very soul. The third season of the show, heavily inspired by the legendary Born Again comic, is a masterclass in showing a true crisis of faith. Broken and hiding in the basement of the church where he grew up, Matt's faith sours into bitter rage. His heightened senses are fried, leaving him truly blind, and worse, unable to sense the world he once protected. He feels completely abandoned by the God he served so faithfully. He says it himself. He now believes in a punishing God. This isn't atheism. It's something way more painful. It's the fury of a spurned lover. He's raging at the heavens, feeling that his devotion has been met with nothing but pain and a profound spiritual void. And what's heartbreaking is that Christianity actually claims the opposite, that God doesn't punish us from a distance, but enters suffering with us. That's the whole point of the cross. Even Jesus cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" in Matthew 27:46. This spiritual agony leads him to a huge decision. He kills off the identity of Matt Murdock. He's dead. All that's left is the devil of Hell's Kitchen. And this is so much more than a costume change. It's a theological statement. He sheds the part of himself that believed in the law, in forgiveness, and in redemption. and he fully embraces the persona that he once saw as a necessary evil. Now convinced it's his true self, he stops going to confession, not because he thinks he's sinless, but because he's chosen to live entirely in sin. And then comes the final devastating blow. Sister Maggie, the nun who's been caring for him, is his mother. The woman he thought abandoned him as a baby was right there the whole time. Her secret was kept by Father Lantom, the man Matt trusted as his moral compass. And this betrayal is the last straw for Matt. His sense of divine abandonment is now compounded by the betrayal of God's own followers. Now this is Matt at rock bottom. He's a man with no hope, driven by one unholy mission to kill Wilson Fisk. To Matt, killing Fisk is no longer a temptation. It's a righteous necessity. It's the only logical move for a soldier who believes he's been abandoned on the battlefield. But the abyss is where his rebirth begins. It's a slow, painful crawl back to the light, guided by people, by his friends, Foggy and Karen, who absolutely refuse to let him go. They are the living, breathing proof of the world Matt Murdock fought for, and they will not let the devil have him. Sister Maggie, despite her lies, becomes a source of tough love, showing that redemption is possible even for flawed people. Now she forces him to face his anger and start the process of forgiveness. And so the real climax isn't a battle for the city. It's a battle for his own soul. Cornered, beaten, with Fisk completely at his mercy, Matt makes a choice. He has every reason to kill him, to end his reign of terror, to get revenge, to finally satisfy the rage that's been eating him alive, but he doesn't. In a moment of raw clarity, he screams, "God knows I want to, but you don't get to destroy who I am." And that's the heart of Christianity. It's not behavior modification, but identity protection. The belief that evil doesn't just destroy its victims, it tries to remake you, to make you someone who you're not. Romans 12:21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." So what's the ultimate cost of faith for Matt Murdock? His journey through the abyss and back shows us that cost isn't a one-time payment. It's a permanent state of war within himself. Matt Murdock is never really at peace, and that's what makes him so profoundly human. His story doesn't offer these easy answers or heavenly reassurances that a lot of us look for. His faith isn't a magic shield, and it demands that he holds himself to a divine standard while fighting through a world that has none. It forces him to soak up all the pain of his city, to bleed for its sins, and to constantly fight the temptation to become the very monster that he's hunting. The end of his story in the Netflix series isn't a happily ever after. It's kind of a fragile truce. He started over with his friends, creating the firm Nelson, Murdock, and Page, and he's kind of made peace with his mother and his past. But the devil is still in him. His spiritual struggles have been resolved with easy answers, and the scars, physical and spiritual, are still there. And that's the real power of his character. Matt Murdock's faith isn't about finding salvation. It's about having the courage to keep fighting when you feel like salvation has abandoned you. It's the belief that even when God's presence feels distant, the ideas of mercy, justice, and redemption are still worth fighting for, and God is always with you. As a Christian, that's why Daredevil resonates so deeply with me. Faith isn't certainty. It's choosing mercy, restraint, and hope, even when God feels silent. He embodies the struggle of anyone who has ever looked at the suffering in the world and just asked why. He's a modern-day Job, a righteous man tormented by a seemingly indifferent universe. And yet, through it all, he endures. He gets back up, and he chooses to believe and to have faith. The cost of faith for Daredevil is everything. His body, his friends, his peace, and almost his soul. But in paying that price, he becomes more than a hero. He becomes a symbol of endurance. He's the man without fear, not because he's never afraid, but because he acts anyways. He's a man of faith, not because he has the answers, but because he has the strength to live with the questions. And in a world of gods and monsters, that makes him one of the most human, characters of all. Thank you for watching, everybody, and I will catch you on the flippity flip.